Tech, a podcast about the intersection between humans and technology. My name is Guthrie. I'm here with Susan. Hi, Susan.
Hello.
So today's topic is mental and conceptual models.
Yeah, just
And
a little light
yeah,
conversation.
this is we generally say that this is the most difficult topic.
In our
Like
entire
it
field.
for people to kind of understand and comprehend. Yeah.
Well, okay, we
Well,
do. We do. Although we'll kind of ease into it.
yeah.
Ease into it.
It's just it is literally conceptual. So
Well,
it's a
yes.
lot. No, but seriously, it's very front brain conceptual,
A lot to think about.
theoretical.
Abstract.
It literally, I mean, the whole it's literally about abstraction. So it's not as concrete as you know some of the other.
Although we're doing a series, and in this first one of the series, I'm going to kind of introduce it. So we'll ease people into it, Guthrie. But you're right. You're right. Out of all the topics we talk about, this is sometimes the most thought.
So I want to say a couple small things before we start
Go ahead.
because I
Go
did
ahead.
actually have something more light that I wanted to share with you.
Oh,
And we'll see, maybe
okay.
you can tie it in, maybe you can't. But
Okay. What is it?
I just thought, hey, we'll start with something fun
All
and
right.
then we'll
I
get to
like
it.
fun.
Just today I was reading an article, an Ars Technica article, and it's about this guy uh and Mr. Edwards. He's a writer there. And he purchased a 2023 edition because they still sell them of a World Book Encyclopedia,
Oh my God.
and they keep updating that. So it's a
They still
yeah
publish it?
2023. So it has the new Supreme Court justice and all everything.
Oh my God. So
Um,
do we need to say what the World Book Encyclopedia is?
sure. I have some information for you.
This actually I can tie this into our
I,
topic,
I
Guthrie.
thought you could. I thought you could. Yeah. So based in Chicago, World Book Incorporated published an encyclopedia in 1917, the year of the Chicago, when I believe it was the Chicago World's Fair. The
Mhm.
company is a subsidiary of Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway somehow,
I
and
didn't know that.
after in the Encyclopedia Britannica ended its print run in 2012 after 244 years publishing encyclopedia, it is now, I believe, the only American or European, or I guess maybe it will English written uh, uh, written encyclopedia in the world. Um, and asked why they're still in business, they basically say, "Well, we'll long as there's a market, we'll keep printing it."
So do we need to talk about what an encyclopedia is?
Sure, if you would like to.
I mean, are there people listening that might not even know what the heck we mean by that?
Sure,
So,
we can't assume that anymore.
right, right. So, an encyclopedia is typically an entire set of books, hard copy books. They are in, they are, there might be like 26 yeah, volumes or maybe not quite that many, but it is alphabetical. So you have volume one is going to be A, volume two is going to be B, uh, and these are all topics. So if you wanted to look up the topic of
Sharks,
sharks, you would
go to
go
the
to the
S's.
S book and look that up, and it would be alphabetical, and you'd find sharks, and then there would be uh, an article of a couple pages long. It depends on the topic how long the article is, but it's going to be like an article. It's going to be text and pictures about sharks. what sharks are, what we know about sharks, different types of sharks. And so every topic one could think about, for instance, you could look up in the eyes, in the volume that it contains I, you could look up Indonesia, and it would tell you everything that they could about
Yeah.
Indonesia. In other words, it's the internet in a book.
No, well, I mean, look, the internet was always modeled after other, other things that currently existed. And
So,
so the
yeah,
encyclopedia was the whole idea is it's the compendium of
of human
all
knowledge.
knowledge, human knowledge, much in the same way that a dictionary would be the compendium of all the words that we know. Encyclopedia is that of all the knowledge, and quite an audacious thing from Apple to in the Peloponnesian Wars to whatever.
Zebras, yeah, A to
Yeah,
Z,
it
A to
is
Z.
just a couple more things about it. Um, 14,000 pages, 22 volumes, 25,000 photographs. It costs $1,200 retail, which really for 22 books is
Not that
shockingly
bad.
not that bad.
These are
Um,
nice books,
these are nice books.
nicely bound
Well, they
hardcover.
used to be nice. I don't know what they're like anymore,
I
but
bet they're still pretty good.
so here's why he bought it, and this is why it's really interesting. And you can do your segue later, but so he's what he said. So he's an AI reporter for Ars Technica, and he often writes about generative AI tools that could potentially pollute our online spaces and our historical records with very convincing fake information. Some people think these tools may destabilize society. At best, they may merely decrease the signal to noise ratio of online information. Years ago, The Guardian and BuzzFeed caused this presumed coming age where true and false information are almost impossible to distinguish, the information apocalypse. Never one to shy away from the chance to coin a term, I've called it the cultural singularity. Although I've warned about AI generated misinformation on Ars Technica as well, I'm still optimistic that people who are cognizant of these issues can get through the coming decade with factually electronic knowledge at hand. But just in case I'm wrong, a little voice in the back of my head reasoned that it would be nice to have a good summary of human knowledge in print, vetted by professionals, and fixed in a form where it can't be tampered with after the fact by humans, AI, or mere link rot. That's appealing to me.
I want
What
to
a
go out and
fascinating idea.
I want to go buy a set right now. I I I think that is a great idea. It's like before we destroy all the species on the planet, let's collect one of everything and put it in a capsule and keep it safe. Um, I grew up, so encyclopedias initially were in libraries, and they still are. However, some at some point, and I don't know when this was. I'm going to guess in the 1940s or 1950s. It became a thing to buy a set for your house. Now, not everyone could. It wasn't $1,200 back then, but it was not cheap, and not everyone could afford it. So, the sign of not a wealthy person, but of a middle class person doing quite well was they would have a set, an encyclopedia in their home. And this meant that you were doing pretty well financially, and it meant that you had a commitment to your children's learning and all of that. And when I was growing up, when I was probably about 10 years old, we started having a set of the encyclopedia. Now, the interesting thing is, and there were salespeople that would go door to door selling these. And of course, they were trying to get you to buy the latest version if you had one
Sure.
already. So that was do I upgrade
Things keep
to the
changing.
set? Anyway, that's interesting. And thank you for sharing that, Guthrie. Is there anything else you want to say about that?
For those who I don't know get inspired, apparently you might be able to get the 2022, um, at maybe a somewhat
Yeah, I'm sure you could.
reduced rate there,
Discount.
and
I seriously want to go buy one.
yeah.
I'm really serious about it.
Oh,
Anyway, all right.
just two more
Yes.
things.
Yes.
The World Book is generally considered the little brother to the Encyclopedia Britannica. So
Yes.
it's good. It's fine. It's very colorful. It's an easy read. Maybe not as thorough as the Encyclopedia
The
Britannica was.
having grown up with both of these, okay, I can tell you there was a distinction, there was a brand. And the branding thing was that uh, the the World Book was the user friendly, easier to read version. If you were a serious scholar, you would have the Encyclopedia Britannica, but it wasn't as good for children because it was harder to read. They were both quite good. I think at one point we had both in our house. So, so this is a good. Thank you for bringing up this topic because it actually I can use it
Oh, one
because
last thing.
what?
Sorry. If you want the 2022
Yeah,
on Amazon,
yeah.
you can get it for $700.
Oh, that's quite a
So,
discount.
so really quite
Now I'm going to have to decide which one
quite.
I want to buy.
Okay, do continue.
Okay, so I want to talk today. I want to introduce the topic of um, mental and conceptual models. Dun, dun, dun. And I think this is appropriate. This I can connect what you just said to this because we could talk about the mental models that people have about stuff. For instance, about information. So I think if you are a younger person, like under the age of 20 at least, maybe even younger, you probably have a mental model of if I need information about something, where do you go to get information? You probably go online. You probably don't go visit a library. You probably don't look on your bookshelf for the encyclopedia, right? What do you think is the age cutoff for that, Guthrie?
For what?
Well, I guess everybody goes online now. What's the age cutoff for the people that used to go either to the library or to the encyclopedia on their bookshelf and now would do it online, but in the past had direct experience of getting information not online? Like, do you
I
have that
only
memory?
yes, but it was as a kid, it was sort of forced upon me. Go go research something and use the encyclopedias. To help people sort of do the stuff.
But did
I
the
so
internet exist during that time? It's just that people were forcing you to do it offline?
Yes, when I was
Okay.
growing up, I would say maybe
When did the
before I was 15, 14, 13, maybe.
Yeah,
Certainly pretty encyclopedia heavy
driven.
driven. Everyone had at school. My school is not particularly nice, so it's not like we had brand new computers all the time. And
Yeah.
so there were computers,
Yeah.
but they probably were IBMs. They were probably not connected to the internet. There
Yeah.
was in the library one or two. I
That
remember
were
using
okay.
the library
Okay.
Microsoft 3.1. I
Okay.
remember using at the library Microsoft 95, 98. And so eventually I remember using the Encyclopedia Britannica online for I think
Oh
Windows
gosh,
2000,
that's
and the
funny.
whole encyclopedia came on a disc or maybe a
Yeah,
couple
I
discs.
remember
That
that.
was a big
Yeah.
deal. But generally the view was, hey, uh, online is great, but we actually don't accept online
Yeah.
because you can't verify the source. So if you're doing a book report, you
Okay.
couldn't cite to it.
Okay.
For most of my I don't know, middle school book reports or whatever. But I do
S-
have lots of memories perusing the World Book, looking at the pictures.
Yeah.
But I am a complete insane person who enjoys just like reading an encyclopedia or just
Yeah.
perusing Wikipedia forever. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely maybe the exception. I think if I was bored, I would probably just read an encyclopedia just for fun. But that was, I mean, pre high school. I think once I hit high school, I don't think I think it was all internet
Yeah. So
stuff.
you had the experience of having a mental model of w- if I want information, I'll go find it in a book or I'll go find it in a library. No, you don't remember it that way. You remember that your mental model is what? If
the
you want
the
information, what did you do?
if I wanted information, like I said, there were a couple of projects where we were forced to go look up
Yeah, okay,
something in
but
the
if you
encyclopedia.
weren't forced,
I mostly looked in the encyclopedia. My recollection is sort of for fun. Like I was just bored,
okay,
and so I was just flipping through pages, reading stuff.
okay. So
I would say
what was your mental model if you needed actually information?
it was to probably well, it's at a certain point, it was to look online. When would I
Yeah,
when I was a kid, when did I need like, if you were 8, what
yeah,
information
yeah.
do you need? I
Do
think
you
I would
need
just
that you just don't go ask an
ask an
adult?
adult, I don't
Okay,
right?
all
Like,
right.
I was like, "Oh my god, I have to figure out I need the chemical formula for this
So
thing,"
these
or I
are
don't
all examples of what I call mental models. Okay. A mental model is the idea you have in your head of how to do something or what something is or how something works. And we all have mental models in our head about everything. So, we have mental models of a process. We have mental Are you waving your hand? Are you
I'm waving
raising
my
your
hand.
hand?
I didn't
Yes,
wanna
that's
interrupt
right.
you. I remember what I used it for.
What?
I used the encyclopedia as my jumping off point.
Yeah.
So what I would do is if I needed I was like, "Ah, okay, I can do a book report on something. What should I do?" I would just grab a random volume, like the
Yeah.
R's, and just page through until I saw something interesting. And then I'd be like, "Oh, that's interesting." Not enough maybe information in the encyclopedia to,
For what you
besides
need, but
number
gives
of
you a
facts, right?
starting point.
But that was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go do that." Or if I was going to do a book report on some sort of dinosaur, I definitely remember the dinosaur section in the World Book very overrepresented from my recollection. They'd have like just a couple sentences on really important stuff and be pages and pages on like the Triassic area or whatever. Um, but yeah, so what I would do is I would read the kind of the high level version, and that would sort of give me a baseline of knowledge and spark some ideas, and then I'd go kind of delve further. So I use the encyclopedia not necessarily as the final step, but as actually an initial step for getting a baseline of information. What are some other aspects about this that I hadn't even thought about? What does it tie into? And then I'd kind of go
Well,
dive from there.
that brings up an interesting issue too, which is actually not about mental models, but I'll take a short digression. Maybe it's about mental models, which is the whole idea of browsing. Um, I think I think our modern world has much less browsing than it used to. I think it's possibly why people like some forms of social media, or why people like, for instance, TikTok, because basically you just go on and you're browsing. So much of our
Hold on. I disagree with that. I
why
don't think you browse. You're watching a show. So
you're
when you swipe,
watching a
it's showing
show.
things
That's
to
true.
you.
That's
Whereas
true.
like browsing is very like I'm the one walking
Yeah,
and
that's
I'm
right.
looking
You're right. You're right. You're right. But
because
there's
the
I
algorithms are
think
doing
there's very
stuff.
little browsing in our worlds these days. I mean, you used to, back in the day, um,
Storefronts.
storefronts. You used to go browse storefronts.
It's coming back.
You used to pick up a magazine and leaf through it and see if anything grabbed your interest. You used to, uh, maybe we have a little bit of it in like news websites or apps or something. Um, but
The important thing about browsing
yeah,
is that, and this is I think that's maybe the difference a little bit. Yeah, is that you're seeing not one thing at a time and swiping,
yes,
you're seeing many
you're
things
seeing
at a
many
time
things,
and
and
then
then
sort
you're
of
choosing
choosing, which is
what to
very
go.
different than most
Hmm.
algorithmically based content where it's like we're
Yes,
showing you a couple things or even just
yes.
one thing and then you click on it and now you're
So there's much
digging.
less browsing in the world than there used to be, and I think I think what one could argue for the value of browsing. Um, uh, anyway, let's talk about mental and conceptual models, because when we're talking about design, I mean, I want to back way up. If we talk about design at a high level and we talk about designing for human behavior, we have to talk about what is the mental model that someone has? What are they expecting? What do they want? What do they need? What do they expect from the experience that you're providing for them, and the experience you're designing? And this is true whether we're talking about what we've just been talking about, like, oh, I don't know, I'm bored and I want to just go look something up, or I need a specific piece of information about something very specific, or I'm trying to do a very specific task, like I need to find a doctor in my area to see who can answer questions about a rash on my skin. So I need a certain kind of doctor. I mean, no matter what you are designing, someone is going to use that thing, and they're going to have expectations of it and how it will work and how they should use it and what they can expect. And these expectations that they have exist whether they've ever interacted with the thing you've designed or never interacted with it. Um, whether the expectations are conscious or unconscious, whether the expectations are what you thought they were expecting or not. There's this whole realm of mental model that people have. And if you ignore that, and if you just design the thing you're designing, software, website, app, physical product, whatever it is you're designing, if you just design it without taking their mental model into account, you are likely going to design something that you have a high probability of designing something that is not what they expected, is not what they wanted, doesn't they can't figure it out, they have a hard time learning it. Uh, this connection between the person's mental model and the actual design of what you create, that connection is critical. If you want to design something that people can use, or you want to design something that elicits a specific behavior. So when we talk about behavioral design, when we talk about um, the psychology of design, we got to spend time talking about a mental model and a conceptual model and the fit between them. So that's what I wanted to delve into. And we're doing a series here. So we'll do like an introductory episode here, and then we'll have another episode coming up in which we dig into even more detail. So, and Guthrie, please do feel free to interrupt me. I'll try and notice if you're raising your hand, but you can even just interrupt me if you have comments or questions or anything else.
Okay.
So the mental model is the model, the consumer, the user, the person using the thing you've designed. It's the model they have in their head. The model that the product itself, the website, the app, the software, the physical product, presents a model to the human using it. And that model we call the conceptual model. So we make a distinction between the mental model, which is what the person has, and the conceptual model, which is what the thing itself is presenting. And what we know is that if those two models don't mesh, the person will say that, oh, this thing is hard to learn. This thing is hard to use. This thing, the one I love is the phrase, it's not intuitive. It's like, what the heck does that mean? Well, essentially, it means it didn't work the way I thought it was going to work. That's what intuitive is. It's not what I expected. So you've got to, if you're the designer, you've got to understand what the user's mental models are before you design. So, and that's it's not always easy to do. The interesting thing, and you have to understand what their mental models are, and then you have to make a whole bunch of design decisions based on that. So, the reason it gets tricky is that there's lots of reasons why it gets tricky. One is that these mental models that people have, they don't all have necessarily the same mental model. So my mental model of how, you know, this remote control works might be different, Guthrie, than your mental model of how it's supposed to work, because we all have different experiences and different exposures to a device like that. Uh, where do these mental models come from? Your previous experience. So again, if we're talking about a remote control, what's your previous experience with remote controls? Do you have a lot of experience with them? A little bit? Have you been using the same remote control for your TV for the last, 3 years? So you're used to that one? Or have you used a whole bunch of remote controls and so you have broader experience? Or, there are people in the world who don't usually use a remote control. So their experience is going to be different. So it comes from our previous experience. It comes from any training we might have had. If you've been trained to use, Windows 11 based software, then you've had training on it. You know how it works. So that would affect your mental model. So our experience, our
Sure.
training, what other people say about it, all these things go together to create this mental model. So everybody has a mental model before they even use a product. And again, that question is, does that mental model they have make it hard or easy to use the product that you've designed? Now, in my experience, still, still, after all these years and everything we know, I think, I don't know. Oh, okay, Guthrie, I'm going to ask you a question. What percentage
Hmm.
of products, and by product I mean very broadly, software, app, physical products, what percentage of products are are designed in the modern day that where someone is purposely designing a conceptual model for that product, just they're purposely saying, okay, what kind of conceptual model should we have for this product? What percentage of products do you think are purposely designed in terms of the conceptual model?
It's like 5%.
Yeah, really low.
That's my guess.
And even that 5% that are purposely trying to do it, they still might be doing a bad job of it. But yeah. So the question is, if 95% of the products are not being purposely designed in terms of conceptual model design, what are they doing instead? Like what, I mean, they all have a conceptual model. They are presenting a design model. Where is it coming from if it's not purposely designed? That's a question for you, Guthrie.
Their own conceptual model about what they think the product is without doing any research.
Okay, so you're saying we have the
I mean, they wouldn't
designers,
think of it that way, but
but actually what's
like
going
the
on
dev
is
people are,
they have their mental model of how it should work, and that's just what they're creating.
yeah.
Yeah, I bet that's probably a high percentage. Anything else? Any place else that the model is coming from?
Competitors.
Okay, that's a good one. So, uh, Yeah, we're going to design a dashboard. Let's do it like this, right? Okay. Anywhere else? Their own mental model, the competitor's model.
Uh, Random chance, the whims of what however they're feeling that day.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd put that one very high, but okay. Sometimes the one I think you've missed is that sometimes the conceptual model of the product ends up being created from the technology decisions that underlie the product. So, we've got
Oh,
a bunch of
the features.
features and functionality and
Oh, yeah,
and
that
we did,
drives you
that
crazy.
yeah, it does
It
drive me
just it
crazy.
incenses her when
It
people
does. I'm
uh
talking about it very calmly
very
right now,
calmly, very sort of
but I
softly
don't
and
feel calm
calmly.
about it. Yeah, no, it makes me crazy. I call it the bubble up. So we have some kind of technology, and here's how the technology works. So, in case and people have not noticed, the way a computer works and the way technology works is not the same as humans. So, when you just take the technology design and bubble it up to the interface, it's usually not a good strategy, but an extremely common one still to this day. Even though I've spent my career trying to tell people not to do it, they're not listening to me. Yeah, so the bubble up of the technology, also not a good strategy, but one that one that happens. So the interesting reality I think about the conceptual model design is that you have it's the piece called the interface. So if we talk about behavioral design, we are talking about how do we design the interface to encourage people to take certain action. And the interface is the part of the product the human interacts with, sees and interacts with, listens to and interacts with. And it's like it's a separate thing unto itself. It should be a separate thing unto itself. There's all the guts and all the technology underneath it. And somebody needs to design that and someone needs to develop that. And I understand that it's very important. But then there's the surface layer that the human interacts with that needs to be connected to the guts underneath, but is not the same as the guts underneath. And so paying attention to that interface level. And that's how we got to this whole term user interface design, but everybody forgets that. The interface is the part that the human interacts with. So, you know, if I have, my cell phone here, holding up my cell phone, um, this phone is a device. It's a thing. It has all kinds of stuff built into it, chips and things I don't understand at all, and they're all doing their thing to make the magic happen. But as the user, as the human using this, I don't directly interact with any of those things inside. I only interact with the interface. The conceptual model of this product is presented through the interface. It's the interface. That's the only part I interact with. It's the widgets and the icons and the messages and the typing in. That's the part that presents the conceptual model. So, Guthrie, have you ever been to Disney World?
Yes. I've been to
Have you been to Disneyland
I th-
in
I think I've been to
California?
both. I've definitely been to both Universals. Um,
So I don't know about Universals. I only
that
know
I
about
think so.
Disney. So at Disney World, um, when you go there as the visitor, you see the rides, you see the buildings, you see Goofy is walking around, or Sleeping Beauty, or Cinderella, or whoever, right? You see the surface layer literally underneath the pavement. There's an entire world that you never see. So underneath Disney World is where all the cast, they call them cast members, all the employees, all the cast, all the crew is all underground. And they go in and they go underground and they go to their area and they put on their costume and then they come up and appear on the pavement and then they go back underground. And as the visitor, you never see what's underground, right? So you are only interacting with this interface level of Disney World. And that's the analogy I use. So my phone, all the inside stuff is the underground of Disney World, and the interface is the above ground. So the question is, how much have you designed that interface to match the user's mental model? Um, if you've designed it well so that it's a good match, then it'll be easy to use and easy to learn and meet their expectations. And if you haven't, then it'll be hard to use or hard to learn or both. So the interesting thing about user research, as a little aside here, is that the main in my view of the world, the main reason to do user research is so that you know what the mental models are of your primary user groups. That's why you do user research, so that you can design to fit that. You don't do user research just because someone told you you're supposed to do it. I mean, that's why you do it, so you can create a conceptual model that matches. So you actually have, Guthrie, two options. You can create a conceptual model. You can make decisions about what's on, we'll assume screen for now, although this is true for voice interfaces as well, um, or haptic interfaces, or whatever you're designing. But let's just talk about screens. You can decide what's on the screen, in what order, in what size, in what placement, so that that's your conceptual model design, so that it matches the user's mental model. Or sometimes you purposely create a conceptual model that doesn't match the user's mental model, and you do it on purpose. And you've heard me give this talk, so now this is quiz question time for Guthrie.
Yeah, quiz question time.
Why would you do that? I just said that if you don't match their mental model, it's going to be hard to use and hard to learn. So why would you purposely say, I know this is their mental model and this is what they're expecting, but that's not what we're designing? In
Yeah.
what instance might you do that?
I know the answer.
Okay, let's see if he gets it right. Let's
I
see,
do.
guys.
I
Is
know
he
the
going to get it
answer.
right?
When
Okay,
you
let's
want to
see.
shatter it
Why would you want to shatter it?
because you're doing something completely different.
Uh-huh. Can you give me an example of a
Uh,
product that successfully, purposely did not match the user's mental model?
No, but it's anything that's new. I'm sure you have the perfectly right example. I
Of
don't know if I
course
know
I
the right.
do.
Yeah, I don't know if I know the right example, but yes, anytime it's like, hey, this is a totally different thing. We don't want people to think of this like a X. We want them to use it completely differently than any other construct that they've seen before.
Yeah, and sometimes I will give you an example, but so I do want to say sometimes people misuse that idea. It's like, oh, we want this tax accounting software to be totally new. It's like, no, it's tax accounting. There's like only so many different ways to do tax accounting. Don't diverge. The example I like to use the most is which you know what? You're going to have to help me come up with a different example because generationally, this example doesn't work anymore. Or it does, but it's hard for people to imagine.
Yeah, you're gonna have to find
So,
something software based.
well, I think the perfect example is the iPhone.
I think that still works.
Because when the iPhone came out,
It's only like
and I'll
13
hold
years
up my
old or whatever.
Android. This is an not an iPhone, okay?
It's
I'm
so
sorry.
20.
But we'll pretend this is an iPhone. When the smartphones first came out and the iPhone was the first real serious iteration of it, um, it did not match anyone's mental model. It wasn't anything like anything because look at this thing. There, you have to think about what were the phones like. What were mobile phones like before the iPhone? Do you
Oh,
remember,
I
Guthrie?
got it.
Because you
I got
actually had
something.
one. What?
Um, Maybe this is a newer one. Electric cars. The mental model of how you drive some electric cars. So there is, you may know, you may not know. Uh, there's a old, and this might be the newer analogy. There's a classic way of driving a car where you have like a, um, you know, you kind of put it into gear. And I know people drive automatic, but for example, what?
You still got to put it in the
Yes,
gear.
but like um, when you come to a stop, the
Yeah.
mental model is you push the gas to go forward and you press the brake to
Yeah.
stop. And
Yeah.
so, for example, some electric cars to encourage you to drive more sustainably, because they're hybrid, right? So if there's an natural engine braking, and so you don't actually press the brake to stop the car. I mean, you do if you like need to stop, but if you're just like coming to a stop sign,
Yeah.
you lift your foot off and the car will sort of naturally stop itself.
Really? I had no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, so they could have done it and all in software where it's just the same way, but they totally broke the and they have like the big display and it doesn't look like a car that you are used to driving. And it's
Yeah.
because it's electric and some electric cars do not do this, but there are some electric cars that just like the way it feels to drive is very different in
Right.
some capacity because the whole point is that like it's not like the gas means go because that's not how it is. It
Yeah.
means like if you press down it's like forward. and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
if and
Yeah.
if you take everything off it's like slow stop and then there's like the hard brake.
Yeah. So I think that
There's just
might,
different.
yeah,
And
it's
they
just
the
different.
screens and I don't know,
So
maybe there's a better example out there.
rather than just have it look and act exactly like a gasoline car, and as you said, do everything underneath, right?
Hmm.
So have people drive it as though it were a regular gasoline car. They're choosing to start to let to have the conceptual model be different.
Yeah,
Um,
because you actually, what you to maximize efficiency, you do not want people pressing the brake
you
that would
need
engage the
them.
brake pad. You
You
want the
need yeah
car,
yeah
the motors of the car to actually turn the other way to charge the battery up so you get better mileage. And only
S-
use the brake pad sort of, I don't want to say in emergencies, but when you really need to slow the car down.
And this is an example of a hard mental model to break, right?
Maybe.
Because
Depends on your
uh,
target audience.
depends on your target audience,
New car
and
owners, maybe
new
not.
car owners who've not driven gasoline cars, then they'll be fine with it. People who are used to gasoline cars might not be fine with it. It's an interesting. There's always that, generational challenges. So, for example, for people, who are, the new generation of people getting smartphones that have not had anything else except smartphones. uh, this is not a transition, right? Here's the phone. Yeah, you do this, you use it this way. But when the iPhone first came out, nobody had ever used it, and the mental model for it, for phones, the mental model for mobile phones was very different. Mobile phones, um, they had buttons. They were kind of like a weird small version of a telephone handset, um, and they were used primarily to make phone calls and maybe a little bit of texting. They were not computers in your hand, which is what the iPhone was. So the iPhone could have looked like all the existing mobile phones and just had extra, you know, stuff built in. But that's not the decision they made. They made the decision to totally break the uh, could totally change the conceptual model design so that it was not connected to the previous mental model. So when you confronted a smartphone for the first time, you could not use your mental model of a cell phone. It just wouldn't work. You looked at it and it was blank, and it was kind of a phone, but kind of not, and kind of a computer, but not, kind of not, because computers were big things on your desk at that time. And so you had to just start all over from scratch. So sometimes you you want to build a conceptual design and interface that purposely does not match an existing mental model. But you have to really ask, if you're the designer, you have to ask, is that what we want to do? Are we doing that on purpose? Because we need to encourage behavior that is brand new. And we want people to look at this thing and say, oh my gosh, this doesn't match anything. This isn't like anything I've ever used before. Because I have to say, most of the time, that's not what you wanted. Most of the time, for most of the products I see our clients designing, that is not the goal. If it is the goal, that's great. And then you're designing from scratch. But and it's, you still shouldn't just design for the guts underneath. But most of the time you don't want to start from scratch. Most of the time you want to understand what the current mental model is and figure out how to work within that most of the time. So, um, all right, next question for you, Guthrie. This one's going to be tougher. So, if we're talking about the fact that the conceptual model presents a model to the user, the conceptual design presents a model to the user through the interface. What are the parts of the interface that present the model?
Oh man. Now you're gonna
Now
make
I'm
me fail.
starting in. Now I'm what?
Now you're gonna make me fail. The menu.
The menu? You mean
Yes, the information architecture.
the information architecture?
That's what I mean by
Right.
menu. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah. What? So the information architecture, how
1,000 people
things are
just groaned.
organized, if there are menus, what they look like, how they act like, right?
Yes.
So how information is organized on this device is a really important part of the conceptual model. Okay. Hey, see, you got one. You got any others? besides the information architecture? He's really thinking.
Uh, do I have any
And
others?
what are other parts of, we're talking
The
about an interface. We're
an
talking about
interface
using in the interface.
and the
The Do you
interface.
know what the interface is?
Only kind of. I mean,
That's interesting.
conceptually, maybe.
What's an interface?
I don't know.
Mhm.
It's sort of like what's communication? It's like I don't. It could be
Okay,
so
what's
many things.
communication?
I don't right, Lisa. Um,
What? All right, I'll give you some hints.
buttons,
Thank you. It's very good. What are, yeah. So what about the
things you can
buttons?
interact with.
What about them? What
So you can press them.
so so how so w- another thing that is part of the conceptual model is, how do you take action? Are there buttons? What are the buttons? Where are the buttons?
Who are the buttons?
No, but close. What do the buttons say?
That's
Right?
information architecture. Well, no, not
Oh,
necessarily. No,
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 it's
no. It would
not.
have to. It
Right,
depends on the
right,
button, I
right,
suppose.
right, right.
Suppose if the button is self-destruct, that's different.
Yeah, so we have the information architecture, how things are organized. We have and what things are called. That's such an important part. Like just what the words on the menu say, uh, what the words that at the top of the screen or page say. What's the label of that page? What are the what are the buttons? What How do I take action? What what do the words say that for taking action? Yep. Any what other part that is part of the interface that presents a conceptual model?
Oh my god, you're making me get more of these. Objects and views.
Oh, you just know. You're just throwing that out there because you know that's part of the conceptual model, but you don't even know what that means. Do you know what that means?
Oh, no. So, for those of you who may not know, we have a series of online certificate, a whole online certificate program, and I remember, Susan did a lot of recording for it, and I was coming up with all sorts of there's the slides and the images and the
The
diagrams
materials for
and
the courses,
putting it
yeah.
together in Premiere and stuff.
And you remember
So
this.
yeah, so I remember at one point I did know all this because I was like deep in the woods, 40,
Wait a
45
minute. So you
slides
forgot
in of
it? You
objects and views.
forgot it?
Hey, I forgot everything I learned in law school too. So let's not, I don't
But this
have
is
room
more
for everything.
important than anything you learned in law school.
No, I could probably muddle my way through of what the difference between the object and the view is.
But
Um,
but you're right, and this is and I have good news and bad news for you, Guthrie.
uh
So in our next episode,
we're doing objects and views.
yeah.
If I recall, it is the objects are the objects, and the views.
Oh, that was
No,
really
no, hold on,
useful.
and the views are the way the objects like are presented.
Okay, but to say the
Is that
odd,
kind of close?
it is, except
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how useful it is to say the objects are the objects because that's
Yeah.
what you just
You're not supposed to
literally
use the
said.
word in the definition of the word. I know
No, you're
that's like
not really.
the objects are the objects. I mean, the objects are like things. Like I mean, there's
This
not.
is fun. I'm really
God,
enjoying this.
I hate conceptual models. No, it's
You
great.
do? Why?
It's so conceptual. Like what's an object, It's so hard. Uh,
It is. It is hard, in a
it's
way.
fine. It's fine.
But it
Well,
is.
look, it's some people may just be better at sort of understanding things and breaking things down. I think part of it's just a terminology thing. This happens in behavioral science sometimes where people just, like heuristics. Like, that's a word
Yeah,
that, like,
yeah, just
means
like
nothing.
there's these words that don't mean anything, and why did
Yeah,
we
it's
pick
like
those
this it's
words?
kind of like a shortcut thing, but, like, what is it, Um,
It's true, and I don't, and I've been working with this stuff for a long, let's just say, a long time. I've yet to come up against a term that I think describes it better than object,
well,
unfortunately.
and the thing about object, right? Are we talking about a car? Are we talking about an app? Are we talking about a toaster? I mean, there are because this is not, it's not
Any of the
exclusive to
above.
digital, right?
No, it's
So
not.
it has to be a word that covers things that a user would run into, both with a toaster and with a dating app. And those are like two
Right.
very
Two really
different
different things.
things,
Right.
conceptually.
Yes.
One's a physical thing and one's a digital thing, and they don't
Yes.
line up in the same capacity. So it's that's I think where things get particularly challenging, because it's not just like you could understand, like a button. A button is something that translates pretty well. I can think in my mind, yeah, there are digital buttons and physical buttons, but they are essentially buttons, but to have an object about every single interface that exists in all formats, it could be so many things. What I'll put it how about I flip the question around? What's not an object? That's like the real question.
Well, I think what's not an object, I mean, I'm going to go back, unfortunately, to like, English, or just grammar.
Yeah.
So a noun, a thing, is an object.
That's why I said an object is an object, because otherwise I would have said an object is a
Is
thing,
a
and
thing, which
that's no
that would
better.
be good too. So, and I agree with you. I think that's why this starts to get, conceptually difficult, or
An
abstract.
object is literally anything that's a noun.
Yes, yes. So a verb is not an object. So push,
Running is not an object.
running, pushing, touching, uh, uh,
Verbs.
verbs are not objects. Also, adjectives are not objects. Little, big, difficult, complicated, those are not objects. Those are adjectives.
I like to sort of think, yeah, no, it's like, can you punch it? That's the rule.
Yeah, I mean, an object is
No, I'm just
whatever it is you are going to do something with.
yeah,
So you are going to do something with an object. You're going to look at it. You're going to
visit it,
visit it. You're
buy
going
it,
to throw it
bop it,
away.
twist it.
You're going to change it. You're going to, that those, right. And so do you know, Guthrie, the history of this goes back to
Oh God, it's.
it goes no, it's really interesting.
I
This
know.
whole idea of
Wait, hold on. Do you want to do this now, or to save that for the next podcast, which
I
is
want
ours?
to save that for the
Yeah,
next
I was gonna say,
podcast.
because now we're just doing
But you're
objects and views.
for the next episode, because you're going to have to remind me though, because I think it has a fascinating and extremely simple aha moment that describes the entire tortured history that came afterwards about objects and about why they're important in conceptual model design and why they're therefore important in designing anything.
Now, here's what I'll say: is
What?
people who don't care about objects and views and don't care about conceptual models,
Yeah.
like, they work with objects too. It's not like people who are not thinking about conceptual models when designing things are not using objects. And I think that's part of the problem, because it's like you are using functionally all the same building blocks that I would be doing,
Yes.
and but and so it's just, well, it's just the place and way that I put them.
Right. It's whether you are designing based on that versus designing based on something else. And our What I'm saying is if
This
you
okay, I think I figured out this is the root of why conceptual models are so complicated,
what
because it is the art of arranging things in certain ways, arranging objects in certain ways, that are better than other ways of arranging objects.
if
And
what you are trying to do is get humans to interact with them
right, well, if you're using conceptual models, that's sort of the
while
point.
you're doing it.
That's why
Yeah.
you're doing it. So that's that. I think I finally understand why it's so hard to train this, because the actual skill of doing quote conceptual models is um it's so it's very much like sand art in some capacity. Like we're all working with sand, but it is the art of putting these things in a particular order and pattern in a way that sort of magically makes sense in some way that's different than the way that someone else would, make patterns and order the objects, in this metaphor, to do kind of draw in the sand. So we're both drawing in sand, but my drawing in sand is, good for the user and therefore better. But because we're just drawing in sand, if you're not familiar of if you don't maybe understand the power of it or blah blah blah, you it is hard to explain the benefits of it, because we're making different sand circles than other people are making, and our sand circles are better.
Yeah.
And that's it's 100% um completely abstract, because
Yeah.
you're essentially working with the same
Yep.
building blocks, which are nouns.
Yep.
So,
There you
okay,
go.
well, we'll do objects and views next time.
Your favorite topic?
Oh my god, this stuff's so hard. Why can't we just talk about like vision, easy things?
You think vision is easy? Okay.
Well, it's
We
well,
can
it's
do it.
easy to teach. I wouldn't. It's more complicated in reality, but
Well,
at least
we started down this rabbit
people
hole
like
and
faces.
we're going to have to
They look
go.
at faces.
You're right. Why did I pick this topic?
No, I mean because it's important, right? But it
It's
is
important.
it's
Not easy, but
y-
important.
y- and it's twice as hard to justify to someone who doesn't understand UX why it's important. Like, why? Yes, we're currently making patterns in sand. I think you should make these patterns in
Right.
sand. And it's like you can't obviously see it. Whereas
Right.
if I say, hey, I would like to upgrade the HVAC,
Yeah.
you were spending $10 and now you're spending $5 because your HVAC's better. It's colder
Yeah.
or whatever. Like it's just it's so much more tangible.
Yep.
You can feel it and touch it.
Yep.
Um, and it's conceptual models. I don't think I realized how artistic it was.
Yeah.
The art. You should really call it the art of conceptual models.
Okay. I'll do
I
that.
think that's great. I think that would set the
Let's
right
talk.
mental model of what
Let's
it is,
let's do that. I love
and
it.
like that
Okay.
it's not like
That's
it's
what
not
this
like learning algebra.
that's what this series
Well,
is
math
called.
is
The
kind of
Art
an
of
art, but
Conceptual Models.
okay. All right. Okay.
All right.
Anything
Thank
else you
you,
want to add to
Guthrie.
this?
No, this is good. This is our introduction. This was our start, and we'll delve into more
Okay.
next time.
Good luck with your encyclopedias.
Oh, yeah. I got to go buy a set.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.